care for ourselves. And our people have, so many complications and issues that they have every day. So I really want to say thank you to all the people that care about all the ones that have sickle cell disease, all the ones that are caring, caregivers that are caring for individuals, whether they're in the hospital or they're at home. And just thank you to all the mothers and the parents, for being there. Doctors, thank you guys for taking your time to join in to this call. And I look forward to having a great show. And we're going to hear from two amazing, survivors of the sickle cell disease, and we can learn a lot, about their stories today and how we can move forward. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so very much, Santonio, and we appreciate your support of the community. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Z. As I said, this is an open dialogue. We are here to talk about the parts of making this decision that feel like a dilemma, the hard stuff, right? There's nothing off the table. Please, we want you all to survive. We don't want sickle cell to take you out, let alone COVID. So we're going to talk about this, and we're going to talk about the hard stuff. So Dr. Z, you're on.
Ray, thank you so much for the introduction and the invitation. Thank you to the sponsor, Santonio, huge fan. Thank you for standing up for sickle cell, man. We don't see this very often, so I think all of us are kind of blown away that someone like you is taking an active interest in sickle cell disease. So thank you for that. Let us sort of, first of all, I want to reframe this and say that I don't want to be here talking to you. I want to really have a conversation with you. See, the honest truth is sickle cell disease is something we study in medical school for a few hours, few days. Everything I've learned about sickle cell disease is from you guys. It's from warriors, it's from patients, right? It's from me sitting with people like Ray and hearing about her story. That's where I learn about sickle cell disease. You're the experts I'm here to learn from, right? I can tell you what I've read in books, but living with sickle cell disease looks different, right? That's different. That's something you can't study. That's something you experience. And I get to learn from your experiences. So thank you for allowing me to learn with you today. I figure the first place to start here is by, Ray gave me a couple things that she wanted me to go over. First thing she wanted me to talk about is viruses. Let's talk about viruses for just a minute. And again, I want to hear Angelo, I want to hear from you, Keandra, I want to hear from you, Santonio, Ray, I want you guys to chime in on this. So let's talk about viruses. We're going to start by talking about genetic material. What is genetic material? So all of us have inside of us blueprints that tell our body how to make our body. Yeah? These are blueprints that every living thing has. Bacteria, animals, humans, we all have it. We call that DNA, right? It's easier to think of it as a blueprint. Now, when we talk about viruses, what viruses are these infectious little particles that are super sneaky. They've evolved over time. I mean, these things have been around for billions of years, probably, and have learned to take our bodies hostage. They're able to go into our bodies, use the machines in our body to build themselves, right? So when we talk about COVID-19, what COVID-19 is doing is it's coming into the human body, it's going into the human body cells, and then it's taking the human body's assembly plant and building itself and exploding more and more of itself, right? And this is what they've been doing for billions of years in different ways. This is what happens with the flu. This is what happens with Ebola, Zika, you name it, right? There are 10 to the 31 viruses. That means 10 and then 31 zeros after it. That's how many viruses there are in our universe, right? On our planet. They say every single organism, plant, bacteria, animal, human, has some type of virus on it at all times, okay? Now, when we talk about the origins of viruses, it's difficult to figure it out because when we look at our genetic material, we see corpses of old viruses from our ancestors built into our DNA. There's signs that viruses have been in us for a long time. They've been changing humans for a very, very long time. So it's difficult to say when it all started, but what we can say is that it probably started from some common source way back when. And over time, by collecting different properties and different genetic aspects, the viruses have changed what they can do and how they can cause destruction. When we talk about the coronavirus, we see a virus that has obviously completely changed the way we think about infections and sickness, right? We're in the middle of a pandemic that we're hoping is slowing down. But COVID-19 is a virus that's part of a family of what we call coronaviruses. And the reason we use the term corona is because around the coronavirus are these spikes that make it look like a crown. So corona means crown. And it's that spike protein that really is what causes the problem. That's what attaches to the human body. I'm going to stop there for just a minute, and I want to hear from you guys. Did you know any of this about viruses? Angelo, let's talk a little bit about viruses, man.
From what you say, I've heard and read so much about that coronavirus. I've read a little bit in biology class about viruses, and what you're saying is adequate, very adequate. Awesome. Yes.
Love it, love it, love it. So you know, as a sickle cell warrior, viruses are a real problem, right? Because you guys are told you get fever, you go to the emergency room, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So viruses are a big problem. Keandra, I see you look thoughtful. Tell me a little bit about what you're thinking about. You're muted.
I want to say that viruses are a big problem because for one, you lose a lot of fluids, and that's very important. It can be a big strain on you because we already have a low immune system. Mm-hmm. So imagine not pushing your fluids and then you have a virus and you're throwing up or going to the restroom. That makes you weak. So it's a big problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we know that infections in general are a huge problem. We talk about bacterial infections in sickle cell disease a lot. So that brings up a really interesting point in what's the difference between a bacteria and a virus, right? So let's go there real quick. So a bacteria is bigger, and a bacteria can live by itself. It doesn't need to be inside of a human. A virus can't, right? A virus can't live by itself. It needs to be inside of something to replicate, to duplicate, to survive, right? So that's one big difference. The second difference is in sickle cell disease, we talk about bacterial infection, and this is why sickle cell patients are on penicillin, right? Penicillin is an antibiotic to prevent a bacterial infection. So antibiotics, they don't work against viruses. That's one thing that we should clarify while we're going into this discussion. Let's talk a little bit more about COVID-19. So of course, COVID-19 hits the United States and people start freaking out. They're like, wait a minute, why is the Black population and the Hispanic population dying more from COVID-19? And they're pretending like this is news to them, right? They're pretending as though they've been taking care of brown and Black communities adequately this whole time. They're like, this should not be a shock to anybody, right? The American healthcare system is not equipped to care for Black and brown communities in the way that we deserve to be cared for, yes? So COVID-19 comes along, and sickle cell doctors like me, when everybody else is freaking out saying, why are Black patients dying from COVID-19? Sickle cell doctors are like, wait a minute, we've known for a long time that you guys don't know how to take care of brown and Black patients. This is not news, right? And we see that the Black population and the Hispanic population are overrepresented in the death column across the board, right? They're overrepresented in the death column in every single state. Now, we know that as victims of structural racism and all of the barriers to access healthcare, this is a very predictable story. This is a predictable story. And I want to dive a little bit into some of the data around what we know from sickle cell disease and COVID-19. Now, I'm going to start with my experience first, which we published recently. We took patients from Detroit, New York, Chicago, and Boston. And we said, we want to see who gets sick and who doesn't get sick from COVID-19 when they have sickle cell disease. And what we found is that the people who got sick were patients with sickle cell disease who were older. They were patients who were on dialysis or had other ongoing issues. They had strokes. They were people who were not on medications like hydroxyurea or Endari or Oxbryta, right? They were patients who had had a history of severe illness in the past, things like asthma, right? Those are the patients that did worse. What we found in our small cohort was there was a chance of dying from COVID-19 of about 10%. I want to stop there for a sec. And I want to hear a little bit from you guys on the panel. Tell me a little bit about your experiences with sickle cell disease and COVID so far, either personal, family, or friends.
So my experience from sickle cell, I want to say first, I was very, how can I put it? I was very scared because I know having sickle cell, you have a low immune system. So the littlest thing from a cold, we can catch it. And like you said, you can get a fever. You can, from that fever, you could go into a crisis. So when COVID came, it made me so paranoid. I didn't want to go anywhere. I wanted to stay in my house. And if you don't control your mind could be a powerful thing. And if you don't control it, it can also destroy you too and get you sick too. And everyone is panicking. And then they come out with this vaccine and you're still nervous because you're scared of the unknown. So it's like, what do you do? So I feel like the best thing I did was do my research. I started with research first.
I love that.
So for me, I am a sickle cell advocate, but I'm also a sickle cell trait carrier. Knowing what I know today about the COVID virus and when it affected the world in 2019, I was scared. I lost sleep. I didn't go outside. I didn't travel. And every person that I came in contact with, whether I was at a grocery store or standing in line or any sort, I didn't want people in my space. I didn't want anybody to cross me because the virus had literally scared me to where I didn't know what to expect, because I am a trait carrier and dealing with low red blood cells. It makes it kind of difficult for you to be out in public and want to catch anything from a common cold to just not having on the proper clothes during any environment. So when that virus hit, it really freaked me out and I lost a lot of sleep. And I really would like to know, how a person living with sickle cell as a trait carrier, can go about their lives on a daily basis and not worry about this issue.
I had a similar experience. It's, being the caregiver of an individual living with sickle cell disease, it was tough because I couldn't imagine being the one that got COVID and then giving it to him knowingly or unknowingly. And so that was paralyzing for me. It wasn't, as much as I cared about how I would do, I cared more about how he would do. And it caused me to not want to engage in any part of life externally. And yet for who I am and my personality, I knew that I had responsibilities. I knew I had to go out and keep, interacting in society in certain ways for one thing, to make a living. But the reality of the fear, I knew that it was getting to me beyond what would be healthy. And so trying to find as much information as I could from trusted sources, going to people who I felt were smarter than me, who I trusted the information that I got from them was important to me. And then recognizing that, taking baby steps to finding what my new normal needed to be, because I couldn't help my son find what his new normal needed to be if I hadn't even found mine. So it was getting over my fear so that I could then support not just my son, but an entire community here in Minnesota who was probably also feeling the same way. And so the individuals that I knew that got COVID, I have interacted with people who had little to no side effects from it and were virtually asymptomatic, to individuals who ended up in the ICU, and other extensions of my community that passed away from it. From a sickle cell perspective, that was my fear. It was, what if? We don't know who's going to be in ICU. We don't know who's going to make it out and who's not. And so figuring that out was the big question for COVID itself. And then you introduce the vaccines. I won't even start with my response there yet.
We'll work our way up to that.
But for me, like everybody else, I was paranoid. Being a single parent, and a patient of myself of sickle cell, it was very troubling to hear about COVID-19 and the rampant part that it took, wiping out over 1 million and how much people it wiped out. And then it was also troubling about the Black community at a higher risk. Black and Latino communities are at a higher risk. My parents that live in the Virgin Islands, they were out saying, "Oh, Angelo, don't go nowhere, stay home. You will have sickle cell, don't do this, don't do that. When you go to the grocery store, make sure you wash all your groceries, everything that come out the bag, put them in the sink and wash them and everything." And when the vaccine came out, when the news about the vaccine came out, I wanted to take the vaccine, but I wanted to see what the unknown was a couple months before I took the vaccine. But I have a great doctoral team, and they convinced me. And I also did my research, and being in the IT field, I know how technology works, and I coupled that with the medical field.
I love all those perspectives because you all had such different perspectives, but it gives me a lot to sort of unwrap here. So I'm gonna take the elephant out of the room. Let's talk about sickle cell trait really quickly, right? So Dr. Amanda Brandow and Dr. Julie Panapento, who are at the Milwaukee, they're in Milwaukee at MCW. They published a study in a journal called Blood Advances, looking at 7 million individuals who are Black and who don't have sickle cell trait, and compared them to 50,000 individuals with sickle cell trait, and combined that and compared them with 29,000 people with sickle cell disease, okay? And they found that while the sickle cell disease patients were at risk for more severe infections and bad outcomes from COVID-19, the sickle cell trait population had the same risk as the Black not sickle cell trait population, okay? Now, that's important, but it's also nuanced, right? So of course, no data is perfect, right? But the one thing is that this is a huge number of patients that they looked at, which makes us feel a little bit better. The second thing is that they're comparing, again, by race. They're comparing sort of how sickle cell trait does in individuals who are Black with sickle cell trait compared to individuals who are Black without sickle cell trait. Well, the individuals, as we know, who are Black without sickle cell trait still are a little bit below where we would expect them to be, right? Because of the effects of structural racism that exist in our very biased and very prejudiced healthcare system. So I can tell you that from a sickle cell trait standpoint, purely by biology, at this point in time, there's no reason to think that you are at higher risk of a bad outcome. Okay, let's just take that off the table. So Santonio, I want to hear you take a sigh of relief after hearing that statement, okay? Just know that you are okay. for now. Okay, so keep staying safe though. Keep doing all that stuff. Now, Ray, of course, Ray, your hand is raised. Is it raised because you have a question, or is it because it's just for fun? Okay.
I like it.
Now, I heard the concept of vaccine come up a few times, and I want to jump into that just because, you know, I want to make sure we cover it in depth as we're going sort of into this. Now, the first thing we need to address is that there are things to understand, right? Every breakthrough in science is building upon prior breakthroughs, okay? Number one, the breakthrough of the ability for the scientific world to communicate with each other at light speed, AKA the internet, and scientists connecting over the internet. Breakthrough number one. Understanding genetic material and how things use genetic material, breakthrough number two. Inventing technology that allows us to read the genetic material inside of a virus, breakthrough number three. Understanding that there's a type of genetic material called mRNA that makes proteins, breakthrough number four, right? And the final breakthrough is being able to take mRNA and inject it into an arm and have it get past all of the obstacles in the way before it makes a protein. That's the fifth and last breakthrough, okay? Now we are in the middle of the biggest global vaccination campaign in the history of the world. 1.7 billion doses across 176 countries have been administered of the COVID vaccine. 1.7 billion doses, okay? The latest global rate is 28.9 million doses per day. This is nothing short of a miracle, okay? In 2019 in China, a virus comes about that's making people sick, and they're not sure why or how. And they find out it's a coronavirus. And within weeks, Chinese scientists get the DNA code, the RNA code, and they put it on the internet. And within seconds, it's gone to scientists in Germany and America, Africa, South America. And within 11 months, we get news that there's a vaccine that might protect us from COVID-19. We've never seen scientific breakthrough happen like this. We've also never seen scientific breakthrough happen like this with scientists of so many different colors. Okay? So before we dive into that, I'm gonna throw a little bit of history at you guys, a little bit of trivia here. Okay? There's a guy named Onesimus. Now, if that name rings a bell for you, color me impressed. But Onesimus was a slave, an African slave who was owned by a guy named Cotton Mather. And this was during the time of smallpox. People were dying, and he was in Boston. People were dying of smallpox. Cotton Mather says, I'm really worried about this smallpox thing. And Onesimus, this really intelligent African slave, he says, well, you shouldn't really be afraid. All you need to do is take part of the smallpox pus from somebody who has it, take that pus out and put it into a wound of somebody who doesn't have it, and then they won't die from smallpox. So the owner says, whoa, that sounds crazy. But a few years later, a doctor in Boston finds out about this. And this technique is called variolation or inoculation. And in Boston, they start doing this at that time point, and it saves lives. People who are getting this procedure done are dying tenfold less. So the first early vaccination in the United States is actually introduced to us by Onesimus, an African slave who's telling us about techniques used in Africa and Turkey and China millennia before we're thinking about it in the United States, right? That to me is so fascinating because it gives us an idea of how much brown and black ancestors knew about medicine before it hit the shores of America, right? Medicine started way back then. It came to these shores and has been amplified here, but we've known about it for a long time. So now here we are in 2019 with new vaccines. Let's talk about the 3 vaccines that are available to us in the United States. So let's talk about first the Pfizer vaccine briefly. So the Pfizer vaccine, as you guys know, was approved for emergency use in December of 2020 and is now approved for anyone 12 years of age and older. It's 2 shots to be given 21 days apart. Common side effects of this vaccine, we will talk about in just 1 second. The first thing I want to tell you is how it works. So basically what happens with the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines is a small piece of genetic material, like we talked about earlier today, a blueprint of how to make the spike protein is inside of this blueprint, right? And that blueprint gets put into our arm and gets picked up by cells in our body that start making the spike protein, just the spike protein, the spikes on the crown of the coronavirus. Why do they do that? Why does this work? Well, the reason that they're doing this is so that when our body sees the spike protein the next time, it's not seeing it for the first time, right? This is the equivalent, Santonio, for you of doing film review before you play your opponent, right? You want to see what that opponent is going to do. And now that's what we're doing. We're letting the body know your opponent's going to show up and it's going to have the spike protein here. And when you see that, blitz, right? I want the immune system to be all over this to make sure it doesn't get a chance to attack the body. And that's exactly what's happening with Pfizer and Moderna. Now, what happens is as you're learning about the spike protein, you expect your immune system to sort of feel it. You expect fever, pain, tiredness, swelling, redness at the site where that injection went in. And this will happen with the first dose and sometimes with the second dose. And I want to hear from all of you and hear about your experiences with this. Now, on rare occasions, this can cause allergic reactions. In fact, there's been 11 instances of needing epinephrine for an allergic reaction out of about 20 million doses given. Yeah, it's pretty low risk. Possible, but a low risk. Now with the Moderna vaccine, the basic difference here is that it's not, as of now, approved for anyone younger than 18 years old. It's still 2 shots. It's still about 3-4 weeks apart. And both of these vaccines give you about 95% protection on almost 100% protection, almost 100% protection from death, okay? I'm going to stop there really quickly. I want to hear from you guys. I'm getting bored of my voice.
Well, can I back up just a minute because we're talking about the vaccine. So, I saw a question that said, what if I had COVID and I recovered? Then should I get the vaccine? How long should I wait? Is it going to do something different?
Yeah, so the answer is yes. The answer is yes. If you have had COVID, you should still get the vaccine. And the CDC recommends to wait 10 days from your last symptom. And the reason for that is the protection that we get from the viral infection alone doesn't reach the levels that we're seeing with the vaccination. Okay, so that's the short answer to that question. But tell me a little bit about Pfizer and Moderna and what you guys have been hearing, co-panelists. Love to hear from you.
I was excited when I heard about the mRNA. And I think that I got excited because I had a little bit of a frame of reference for the use of that type of technology. Now, if this was 10 years ago, I would have been a little bit concerned. And I think mostly because I don't want people messing with my DNA, right? I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know who's controlling all of this technology and all of this science. And I don't know who's protecting me, who's protecting my community. And it kind of triggers some of that historical background that just is always there, that makes me wonder who's protecting us. And that was really, I think that's what's peppered with everything that's happening right now, is who's going to protect us, and how are we going to know? And that was it. But because I understood a little bit more about how mRNAs are working, I felt a little bit more confident that this, as much as may have been the first time that they've used it in a vaccine, they've been studying it and using it in different ways for a very long time. It's been in development for, I think last time I heard 2030, like it's not new that they've been studying it, but now here's a perfect opportunity to utilize it on a massive scale versus the smaller scales that they had been using it.
You know, Ray, that's such a good point. You know, that first reaction that you have of hesitancy, it's 100% appropriate. You know why? Because Linus Pauling, the guy who discovers the mutation, that single mutation in sickle cell disease in the 1940s, in 1950 is on record saying that if you have sickle cell gene trait, AKA, on inside of you, you should have tattooed on your forehead that you have sickle cell trait. Or you should have tattoos of Braille on your abdomen so that people can check to see if you have trait. This country was intent on erasing, right, the Black population from this country, right? So these are completely logical ways to think as far as you're thinking. Like, what is going to happen here? Is my genetic material going to be messed with? You know, people might look at you and be like, wow, this lady's paranoid. But no, like that's a very reasonable thing. So let me tell you, what's changed? What's changed since Tuskegee, right? What's changed since the American government was withholding life-saving medication for syphilis? What's changed from Henrietta Lacks? What's changed over all this period of time? Well, what's changed is that people who look like us are on this side now, right? We're here, we're in this. We're the scientists who are doing this. They look like the people in this Zoom conference right now. That's a big change. The second thing is transparency and regulation, right? The Institutional Review Board, or IRB, is following everything. You guys saw what happened with Johnson & Johnson, right? 9 million vaccine doses of Johnson & Johnson given, 6 women, middle-aged women, get blood clots in their head. And immediately the program gets shut down, right? National pause. That's the difference in science today, right? 6 out of 9 million and the entire program got shut down, right? That's the type of transparency we're demanding here, right? And we're demanding it not just in vaccines, we should be demanding it in every realm of sickle cell disease, in every new medication in sickle cell disease, in every encounter that a sickle cell patient has with an emergency room. That's the type of transparency we deserve to have, right? So I think things are changing. You're right. I think that we should be hopeful in where science is right now.
Yes, Dr. Z, we talk about.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. We talk about transparency, and so many of our patients that are living with sickle cell disease, they don't want to go to the doctors to get regular checkups so that the research can continue to be done for people like us in our community. It's people with trait that are trait carriers who should go and get checked out a lot more so that research can be done to study for what COVID can do and how it affects an individual living strictly with sickle cell. So when we talk about being transparent, us as an individual, we have to go to the doctor more. We have to participate in learning and studying about our own bodies, the things that we eat and the things that we do and how it affects how we live. This is what Dr. Z is talking about why this study got shut down. Because 6 people out of 9 million Could have been those 6 people that did not check up on themselves regularly. Could have been those ones that did not eat healthy enough and thinking that it's okay based on the way that they have been living for so many years. And now their bodies are reacting to this virus that is actually trying to protect them in the future. So I had very many concerns about if I should get the vaccine or am I living healthy enough and staying away from these people. And I go to the doctor regularly to check on my blood and my health. And I'm encouraging everyone that has either sickle cell trait or is an actual carrier of the full disease to just go to the doctor and get checked up more, because these studies and these numbers can be proven and giving us the right information if we take care of ourselves a lot more.
I totally agree. I feel like it's very important. I feel like you should have a relationship with your doctor. Like you when you go for your checkup, you should have a list of things that that you want to know more about. I feel like the better the relationship with your doctor, so you can know what's going on with my body, or what medicine should I take, or how can I eat better? The more they know, the more they can help you. And the more you know, the more comfortable you can be. And I feel like people don't want to go for checkups because they're so scared of what the doctor is going to say. But whether it's good or not, at least they can help you if it is an issue. And you can know what's the next best step for you.
Yeah, I am in total agreement with what everyone is saying. Going to your doctor can save your life, can make you live longer, I know that the Black population and the Hispanic population, more about the Black population, I think we have a hesitancy in going to the doctors. I guess because of what happened in the past with other with the past Black population, even our family members that we know. But as Keandra said, we need to have a relationship, a special relationship. My doctoral team and I email them I email them very often to see, okay, what should I do? I'm feeling like this, whatever. And they email me back in the same day. And I think that's how like every patient doctor role should be. Very much transparent, having a good relationship, and you find a doctor that is very comfortable with, that you are very comfortable with, and that you can trust, because trust goes very far.
So one of the questions that I have is, like, is there a difference between if you get the vaccine at a clinic versus, say, if you go to like an event center, or if you go to your local pharmacy, like the CVS? Should we be concerned as people living with sickle cell disease of where we're getting it at?
That's a really good question. I think it depends on your level of comfort. And really, to me, the priority is just getting it. Wherever you can get it, get it. If you have a good relationship with your physician, this goes back to the whole relationship thing. If you have a good, comfortable relationship with your physician and you get your vaccine at a clinic, you should feel confident in your ability to manage side effects. You should be able to get in touch with your doctor and run it by them, right? Every doctor has different ways of interacting with their patients. I mean, for me, it's text messaging, right? So my patients text with me and I text with them as far as updates on what's happening. With Angelo, it's email, right? So you should be able to have that relationship. If you don't have that relationship, you should probably find another doctor if you can. But that being said, the location matters less as long as you're prepared. You guys, sickle cell patients, warriors, caregivers, and advocates have known for a long time the only people looking out for sickle cell patients are yourselves, right? You've got to know that if I have a fever, this is what I need to do. if I have pain that feels different, this is what I need to do. If this happens, this is what I need to do. You guys have to be, like Antonio was saying, listen to your bodies, right? You've been doing this. This is what you've been doing your whole life, is listening to your bodies. So keep doing that. And really, it shouldn't matter where you get the vaccine.
And I'm just going to run through a couple of these questions that I see, because I see several questions that want to know, is it common to go into a crisis after getting the vaccine?
So I can only tell you what I've heard from my patients. And I've heard from my patients that they have felt pain, localized, and aches sometimes, but it's felt different from their usual sickle cell pain. I haven't had anybody who ended up in the hospital, but I'm curious to hear everybody else's experience too on this.
Excellent. Go ahead, Keandra.
My experience after I got the shot, I was weak. I did experience aches and pains, but it wasn't sickle cell crisis symptoms. My body was very tired and drained, but I felt like I had a plan. I had a plan before I went in to take the shot, because I get the same symptoms when I take the flu shot. So like I said, I emailed my doctor and I told him all my concerns of, what if this happened, what should I do? Or what if this happened, what should I do? So before I even got the shot, I took a Motrin. He told me that would help with the pain and the aches. And when I got home, I took a nice hot shower, and I also used my heating pad. But I didn't go into a crisis. So I was very happy about that.
Awesome. What about you, Angelo?
For me, the first shot went normal. I didn't notice any pains or sleepiness, any flu-like symptoms. In fact, the next day I got up and I did a run of 8K and came back home. So for the second shot, I felt like a little burning while the vaccine was going into my arm. And then later throughout the day, I felt sleepy, but that's about it. Sleepy, kind of tired, fatigue. And that's about it. No pains. I didn't take, unlike Keandra, I didn't take any pain medication. Well, I usually don't take pain medications, no matter what. I try to bear it out. So that was it for me. I was thanking God that nothing happened, and we're fully vaccinated, and we're on the land of the living, ready to take on some more challenges in our daily lives.
And when I got the vaccine, the first dose that I got my vaccine in kind of early February and early March. And the first one, I was tired. I needed an extra nap the next day, that fatigue. And so when I got the second one, I didn't have any pain at the site or anything. I kept moving my arm. I made sure not to hold it stiff, because then it would just get stiffer, right? Then the next time, I actually made sure that I got my second shot on a day that I didn't have to work the next day, because I was anticipating being a little bit tired. I drank lots of fluids and things before I went, and I actually didn't need an extra nap, and I didn't feel that same type of tiredness. But I made sure that I ate, and I made sure that I drank lots of fluids before I went. And that's how I got through it.
So for those who have sickle cell disease or have the trait and they have not gotten vaccinated, we are all recommending that you do. But for those who still have questions that are afraid to even ask, or don't even know what type of questions they should be asking, Dr. Z, what do you have for those patients who have not gotten vaccinated, are scared to get vaccinated, and still are worried about what the numbers are saying about how a person or individual living with sickle cell disease, may fare in the future living with this vaccine. You're muted. Sorry.
Sorry, man. I was hoping that I'd get through this whole thing without doing that, but man, that's a great question. Our number one goal to protect our community of sickle cell warriors, sickle cell trait patients, is really going to come from our own doing, right? Nobody's coming to save us, right? So I saw a question earlier about, mask wearing, hand washing, things like that. My general opinion of the world has been you can't trust anybody. And the reason I say that is because there's a lot of people out there that come from a place of privilege where they can be without a mask, right? And they can be non-vaccinated, and they're going to end up in the hospital. And you know what? They're going to get all the good treatment that they can, and they're going to be treated fairly, and they're going to be treated, with equally. They're going to be treated well, right? A lot of the sickle cell warriors don't have that. They don't have that ability, right? I mean, we saw the president of the United States get COVID-19, right? And when he ended up in the hospital, he got new therapies, he got experimental therapies, he got everything you can name. Sickle cell warrior ends up in the emergency room. That's not happening, right? I mean, that's not going to be the way that story goes. So you got to do everything you can to protect yourself. Now, I'm not the kind of person that's going to guilt anybody into saying you need to do this, you have to do this. To me, it's always been, if I can't convince my patient to get the COVID-19 vaccine, I just haven't spent enough time talking to them about it. That's a failure on my part, right? I haven't been able to get that message across. So I'll keep talking to them. I think that for the most part, the sickle cell community has done a really good job of taking COVID-19 seriously. I mean, to the point, Santonio, that we've got warriors that weren't coming in to get treatment for their pain because they were afraid to get COVID-19. They were sitting at home suffering, right? So I just want to reiterate that the way the science is happening today in 2021 is through glass walls. It's not happening behind closed doors. It's happening in a way that every one of you can watch. Anybody can log into the vaccine adverse event reporting system and search through it and look to see what side effects happened. They can talk to the scientists. You can email the scientists that are on the research protocols and ask them questions. Everything is open. And again, I'm not the kind of, for me, it's always been, if you want patients to do something, you should be willing to do it yourself, right? So I can tell you that I had my vaccines, my parents got their vaccines, my sisters, my wife, everybody that I know and love got the vaccine. And if it was something that I would be worried about, that I would certainly not have my loved ones go through it. I know that doesn't always help everybody, but that would be the best answer I could give you at this time.
Thank you. And I hope it answers, questions for everyone who are out there living with sickle cell disease and have the same concerns, that are afraid and don't want to get out, that you're hearing it, firsthand from someone who has been vaccinated, from someone who has asked his family to do it as well, and have literally, taken it upon their liberty to protect every one of their family members. So I say that to say I have a son who has sickle cell disease, and I am one of those parents who are afraid of what may happen, how his body may react. Will his lungs continue to function well? Will he continue to be active? Will his lungs fill up with fluids and cause him to have one of his lungs collapse like he has been through before? Because he's not active enough to keep his body, regulating the oxygen level in his blood. So these questions are still there for a lot of us as parents.
So Antonio, now that you gave me that perspective, can I add one more thing to my answer? That's okay. So look, we have now, I just told you guys, given 1.7 billion doses of this vaccine, okay? Every side effect that's happening so far along the way is being monitored and tracked. It's It's predictable, right? So if I give someone a COVID-19 vaccine, I know the most common side effects and what they're going to be. I know the rare side effects and what they're going to be. You know what I don't have a lot of information about? I don't have a lot of information about what COVID-19 does to a sickle cell body, the virus itself, right? That's something that is, yes, there's some information. There's 700 cases that we know about in the United States that have been tracked and followed. But it's hard for me to predict which kid comes in and gets acute chest from COVID-19. It's hard for me to predict which kid comes in and has a lung collapse from COVID-19. It's hard for me to predict which kid comes in and stays in the hospital for 2 days versus 14 days, right? It's hard for me to predict which sickle cell patient gets a clot from COVID-19. I have no way of predicting that, right? There's a lot of unknown with what COVID-19 is actually doing. Now, when there's 1.7 billion shots given, you can follow that a little bit more closely. So I think that if there's chaos from the COVID-19 vaccine, it's controlled chaos. It's something that you can monitor. You know what's happening. You know what to look for. You know when to look for it. You know the time frame. So I think that's kind of how I talk it through with my parents here in Detroit.
Dr. Z, I'm going to read a couple of these questions before
Please.
we wrap it up. And I'm going to try to see if I can bring the person on live. But until I know, I have an anonymous attendee that said, what about someone that's been scheduled to stop taking certain medications to prepare for a procedure? Should they get this shot not knowing whether it can interfere with the procedure?
So I'm not giving you medical advice here, but I'll say that that's a conversation that you really, whatever medication we're talking about here, whoever started it, that's who you should be having the conversation with. What I can tell you is based on kind of this very vague question, my vague answer is you probably are still okay to get the COVID-19 shot. That would be my best guess based on what I know from that question.
Great. Another question. What would you say to a patient who has been deemed unable to get the vaccine? With everyone else being vaccinated, is it okay to attend gatherings like church or other social larger gatherings?
So this goes back to trust. How much do you trust the people around you? How much do you trust your tribe, right? To protect you? Because that happens. There are people who can't get the shot for whatever reason. But then you have to lean on the people around you to be your shield, right? When we talk about that concept of herd immunity, that's what it's about. It's about becoming the shield for patients that can't have a shield themselves, right? So do you trust the people around you? Do you go to a church that has high vaccination rates? Is your family vaccinated? Have you, is there social distancing? This type of stuff is what becomes important in that type of setting.
Excellent answer. One of the things that I oftentimes tell people is know your village, and know the behavior patterns and the lifestyle patterns of your village, because we are in a time of a new normal. So, I might not go into, certain environments where I don't know people, but I may go to a larger, maybe family reunion that's local that I do know who's coming. And we've had some of these tough conversations, and I can feel a little bit more safe because they're my trusted village versus my extended village. Okay, another question. This is a good one because this is about kids. So if I decide to get my son vaccinated, will he have to get this every year? He's a healthy sickle cell patient. He's 15 and hasn't had a crisis since he was 7. Girl, that's good. And before then, at 1 year old, I hear fluid on the heart and all these other things coming up. And it just seems like no one really knows what will happen. I don't get vaccines, not even the flu, so I'm very hesitant. Help us.
So I completely am sympathetic to what this mom is saying. First of all, I agree, amazing. 8 years without crisis, fantastic. That's a win, right? So clearly, you're doing something right? Half of the battle for a sickle cell patient is having a parent that's doing something right. and good on you for doing that. Look, I'm not going to tell you what you're doing is right or wrong. What I'll tell you is this: that little warrior in front of you who's 15 years old is not always going to be 15 years old. That little warrior in front of you is going to be a 25-year-old, and then a 35-year-old, and then a 55-year-old, and a 75-year-old. Decisions you make now can affect how things look when he's there, right? And I understand. I see flu hesitation around the flu shot all the time. Hey man, I got the flu shot in 2015 and couldn't walk for 2 weeks. I had to learn to walk again. Okay, I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. Now, that scared the heck out of me. Both my kids still get the flu shot, right? And you might think that that's crazy, and that's fair. But we all choose our cross to die on, right? So that's mine. My kids still get the flu shot because I believe in science, right? Science is my religion. Now, what I can say is, is it a completely zero chance that nothing bad will happen? That's never the case, right? We play probabilities, right? Everything is a probability. For someone like your son, the chance of him having a bad reaction is very, very low, right? And the chance of him dying from COVID-19 once he gets the shot is also very, very, very low, right? We're talking fractions of a percentage. So, you know, that's a personal decision, but I can tell you that it sounds like you're such a thoughtful mother that's been taking care of this warrior. So just trust your instincts.
Great answer. Another question is, I came across a recent study, perhaps out of Germany, that claimed where the coronavirus vaccines are effective against COVID-19, there is a chance that it may reduce other immune responses. Folks with pre-existing immune system conditions may be fearful or confused in hearing these types of studies. Can you touch on this or give some reassurance?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that we really focus on in research is something called the N, right? How many people were in a study, right? Is it a study of one person? Is it a study of 4,000? Is it a study of 60? Is it a study of 1 million? The bigger that number, the more able we are to pull conclusions out of it, right? The more able we are to say that makes sense, right? Like, this is a study of 1 million people. I can pull conclusions from this. If it's a study of 50 people or 12 people, less likely. So I'm not familiar with this German study. What I can tell you is that regardless of pre-existing conditions in people who got the Pfizer and Moderna shots, their protection was basically the same as everyone else. I'm not familiar with it reducing immune responses, though, in other aspects.
Thank you. And then what about sickle cell patients who no longer have a spleen? Is it safe for them to receive the vaccine when when they don't have one, or their spleen's not functioning, which is virtually every adult?
Everyone. Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Fantastic question. The short answer is yes. If you don't have a spleen, you're still safe to get the vaccine. In fact, it's a good idea. It's a good idea because, you know, not having a spleen is really what drives the immunocompromised state in sickle cell disease, right? That's kind of what's driving all of this. And that's what makes you likely to get pneumonia and meningitis. So protect yourself from something else. And that something else being COVID-19. We know that it causes death in sickle cell disease. So protect yourself.
Thank you. What about so when we're talking about the mRNA versus, say, the Johnson & Johnson and some of these other technologies that were used, the question is the mRNA vaccine better, worse, or the same as the Johnson & Johnson? Or is there, and I'm going to add on a little bit, is there any of the currently used vaccines that individuals with sickle cell should avoid if possible?
Okay, good question. Great question. So a lot of variables here. So the first thing is, no matter which one you get, your chance of dying from COVID-19 virtually becomes zero, regardless. Number one. There are situations in which the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is preferable for patients, and that's a patient-specific thing. So I've had patients tell me, I'm deathly afraid of needles, I don't want 2 shots. I want 1 shot. That's a Johnson & Johnson person, right? And that's somebody that I will say, go for it, right? If that's your deal, do it. My preference so far, I'm a pediatric physician, right? The Pfizer vaccine's approved for 12 and above, right? That makes it easy for me. And I think most of my patients have gotten the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. You know, I won't lie to you. I'm a little bit, you know, as a hematologist, I think about the clots, right, that happen with Johnson & Johnson. That does come to mind. But I think that overall, the benefits of getting any of the 3 vaccines outweigh the risks in general.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
You said you're concerned about the clots. So can you put a patient on aspirin to help that, or
Such a good question.
Eliquis?
Such a good question. Such a good question. So the type of clots that are happening in these individuals with the Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca vaccines are what we call vaccine-induced thrombosis and thrombocytopenia, VITT. What that means is you're getting your platelet count to drop and you're getting a clot from the vaccine. So the typical blood thinner we talk about is heparin. Heparin is something that really probably you can't use. The short answer is nobody really knows how to prevent it from happening, right? We know it's happening to middle-aged women, not sure why. And as of now, can't make a recommendation on aspirin or Eliquis or any other blood thinner to prevent this from happening. We don't know enough. 6 out of 9 million is just not enough to study.
I'm glad that you asked that question, Keandra, and the way that you answered it, Dr. Z, because there was a question in the Q&A that talked about D-dimers and indications for heparin or other anti-thrombosis therapy. So if I understood your response, we just don't have enough data to be able to make larger recommendations across the board. So people should, in fact, have that conversation with the physician that knows them the best.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Excellent.
So, hold on, Ray, 1 second. So, Dr. Z, if since the virus is active and the vaccine is available, and these patients are still, like I overread one of the questions, still saying they're still not going to get this shot.
Yeah.
Like, what do we say to them?
I mean, I think that, you know, what you say is that you know that you're taking a risk, right? So this is no different, Santonio, than having a 3-year-old with sickle cell and not giving them penicillin, right? The chances of them being okay are good, right? But do you want to play that lottery, right? It's like someone giving you a lottery ticket and saying, hey, this is a lottery ticket and 1 out of every 1,000 of these will cause you to die. Is that a lottery ticket you want to buy? Probably not, right? That's probably not a lottery. Even though the odds are low, you probably don't want to buy that lottery ticket. Now there's another lottery ticket where the chance of you winning is 999 out of 100, where you don't die. That's the lottery ticket I want, right? If I'm playing the odds here, right? And that's kind of how I think about it. You know, like I said, we can't tell anybody what to do with their child. All I can do is keep presenting information and keep trying to show them why this is the right choice to make in the moment. But I respect everyone's choice. What I would say to the people that still are hesitant, keep having conversations with your doctor. Keep listening to the body, watch the body, right? Watch your warrior carefully and stay in tune, because we're really holding back protection that could be life-saving here.
Can we get more of this information to our sickle cell doctors in the sense that the same words are being transparent amongst every doctor that is encouraging their patient based on the study that they have and the research that they have done for every patient that they have seen over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I recognize that sometimes the physicians that take care of sickle cell patients are rough around the edges. And that's something that we have to fix internally as physicians. That's something that we need to correct, right? Because there is, Dorothy Roberts said, there's a quote, I'm going to read it to you. It says, it's not the Black population that has irrational fear of new medical technologies. It's that they actually have an awareness of a long history of being disrespected, mistreated, and violated by healthcare professionals. And that's the God's honest truth, right? That's what's been happening. That's the story of American healthcare. So you really do, if your doctor's not willing to have conversations like these with you, and one of the ways to really gauge this is, how much time does the doctor spend talking versus you talking when you're in the room with them? If they're spending most of the time talking, that's a doctor you really probably don't want to be around. You want a doctor that's actually willing to sit there and listen to you talk. And you want someone who's going to listen. Find that doctor. Find those people. They exist. I have colleagues out there that are amazing. They exist. You just have to look for them sometimes.
And I'm going to add this, here at the Sickle Cell Foundation of Minnesota, we strive to, when we talk about the sickle cell community, we are talking about patients, we are talking about caregivers, but we're also talking about providers. We have to really bridge the gap that exists between those who care for us and those who need caring for in the medical setting. So even in this town hall, we actually have sickle cell providers from Minnesota who are part of this town hall. And what I'm hoping is that there are more providers across this nation who are willing to plug in to social media to see that when these types of presentations and opportunities come, that they can sit and learn and listen outside of just the clinic setting, because it's in the community that you learn what you don't learn in the clinic setting. And there's so much to gain in how you practice medicine and how you interact with us as human beings, as individuals, and as a cultured community that are really important and require you to step beyond the walls of your clinic or hospital setting.
Dr. Z.
Yeah.
Dr. Z, I have another question. Other than our population being disrespected medically, how do we differentiate facts from fiction from non-fiction? We, like, a lot of conspiracy theories are coming out about COVID, and then a lot, I know for the Caribbean folks, there are a lot of saying that, okay, all we have to do is just take some whatever bush tea and whatever bush, and do some kind of mixture, whatever, drink it, and everything should be okay. So how do we differentiate between those conspiracy theories, those those fictional stuff, to what is real?
This is maybe, I make the argument that this is the biggest right now problem in sickle cell disease, is finding medical misinformation. That's information that someone's sharing with you that they think is true, but isn't. But then there's something more dangerous, which is medical disinformation, which is somebody sharing information with you that they know is wrong, but they want you to have. Okay. And usually those are the people who are selling you things like mixtures of bushes, and they have a way to generate profit from it. So this is a problem that exists in almost every disease space. It's amplified in sickle cell disease, mostly because of the number of sickle cell patients. By the time this town hall's done, right, in 90 minutes, there will be 45 new sickle cell warriors born worldwide. Right? Think about that. Right? There's a child with sickle cell disease born every 2 minutes in our world. That's how many people are participating in this conversation. So you're going to get all sorts of theories. And you also have to remember, the thing that I want to really emphasize to everyone here today is what works for Angelo, it won't work for Keandra, right? Keandra's story is different from Ray's family story. It's different from Santonio's family story. Not every sickle cell patient is the same. right? That's a really big mistake. You have sickle cell warriors in the same house, brother, sister, brother, that have completely different sickle cell stories to tell, right? One had a stroke, one didn't. So what you can't generalize anything about sickle cell disease. And I think that, you know, this medical misinformation and disinformation, my personal goal in life, honestly, is to create a system that immediately checks facts and tells you what we know and what we don't know about it. Because I've seen patients who have been significantly harmed by doing crazy things that they've seen on Facebook or seen in a WhatsApp group. So, you know, it's on all of us, I think, to share as much factual information as we can and to shut down bad information when we see it. But talk to your doctor about everything, you know, when you have questions about what's real or not. And I'm not saying doctors have all the answers. Don't get me wrong. We don't have all the answers at all, right? Because you'll have doctors that you'll go to and you'll say, you know what? I feel better when I drink alkaline water or beet juice, and they'll laugh at you. They'll shut you down. That's a doctor you don't want to deal with, right? Like, you want a doctor who's able to be like, oh, you know what? You might be onto something. That's really cool. Let me think about that a little bit, right? So you also want to be able to have somebody who's having this type of communication with you.
Dr. Z, I'm gonna ask two questions in one. Please. And they are both about you know, different varying stories or responses that are out in the press, right? One is there something in the shop that causes metals to stick to you? And then the other is what is the scientific data around sterility in males and females after the vaccine?
Good questions, both. Well, interesting questions. So the first one is no, you do not become a magnet after getting the vaccine. I can tell you, here, I got the Pfizer shot. Here, look, nothing, right? That doesn't happen. Nothing is sticking to me. So that's number one. Number two is sterility. So, you know, the vaccine's only been around for a year. But that being said, I can tell you, based on how the vaccine works, there's no reason to believe that this vaccine would cause people to become sterile. There's 1.7 doses administered, and the birth rate in the world hasn't changed. So I can tell you that people are still having babies, and things are going as usual. And trust me, if 6 women having a headache and finding a clot could shut down an entire vaccine program, people not having children would absolutely shut it down really quickly.
And where is the genetic material coming from? Like, where are they getting the virus that go to do the tests that make it into vaccines?
Yeah, it's literally from patients. Literally from patients. You know, they've isolated the vaccine and re-engineered what the spike protein's blueprint is, and then taken that blueprint and literally replicated it in the lab. Yeah, Santonio has a question, it looks like.
Yeah, so during my campaign with One Blood and the fight for African Americans to donate more blood so that sickle cell patients can receive blood and more inclined to finding matches throughout the blood transfusions and the blood exchanges. I kind of lost my question.
Well, I just want to, first of all, thank you for doing that type of campaign, because that is one of the most important things in sickle cell disease right now.
No, thank you.
But were you going to ask about COVID-19 and blood transfusions?
No. So I had went to visit the One Blood bank, and I was able to witness how the blood is being, broken down into the platelets and being used. So to hear this information and how transparent it's being today, I have an understanding for what the doctors do behind closed doors when they're working with the antigens to be able to help these the antibodies, protect, what's going on inside our bodies.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you got to see that. And literally, I mean, That's the goal, is just doing this behind glass doors, right? Letting everybody see what's happening, because there's nothing to hide. There's nothing to hide here.
You know, I use the term oftentimes, knowledge is power, right? And the absence of knowledge is oppression, because so much of what we think we know, there's so much more to know and understand. And when you get an understanding behind the scenes, like I spent years in blood banking, right? And to understand how blood has 3 other components and each component can be used separately, and how there was a time that I donated blood because I had the trait, and I was in a special program because they needed blood because they were building something called reagents in order to make other products that could help other people, right? Had I not known that, had I not understood how all of that worked, I might be concerned and might start asking, well, what you gonna do with my blood? Well, what are you gonna make out of my blood? Well, what is this? And how is that gonna hurt somebody versus how's that going to help somebody? And so when we start looking at science through a different lens, and we recognize that there's science is so vast and so big that, you know, that's why you have different specialists and not just one. No one can contain all of that sciencey information. But when you better understand it, that's when we make informed decisions versus uninformed or emotional decisions. And that's what all of this boils down to, right? It's about making informed decisions. We are not in the business of taking away people's individual rights to choose. We don't want to live in that society, right? We are already struggling with, you know, mandates and things that feel like it's starting to encroach upon our personal rights. However, what we have to do is make sure that we're filtering it through in factual information, science-based information, and that we are continuing to ask the questions, particularly in a time where people are so hesitant to believe anything that's coming from the government down or from science down. We have to be able to ask what might sound like a ridiculous question or a ridiculous theory. If we are in an environment where we can't ask those types of questions, I agree with Dr. Z. Find a new environment, find a new doctor. The doctors have to be ready to have tough conversations. This conversation we're having tonight is important because people are able to ask some of the things they just simply didn't know or they've heard, and really want to hear what other people in the community have to say about that. But more importantly, what does science say about it?
And when we talk about how powerful knowledge is, just think, if you as an individual went to a blood bank and donated blood today and got into a car accident tomorrow, will you have enough supply to repair and care for yourself? This is what knowledge really is about. And if you care enough about yourself, and even as an individual who looks just like you or care just like you, why not go out and give blood so that you too could save a life? So that's how powerful knowledge is, when you understand exactly how you can help someone.
And I'm going to add, because you know, the American Red Cross has been a huge supporter of Sickle Cell Foundation of Minnesota, and we have lots of conversations about, you know, the lack of blood donors in the Black community, right? And we know that if you have sickle cell disease, not only can't you donate blood, you are a recipient. At some point in your life, you have likely been a recipient of blood. What we never want to face is a shortage on the right blood at the right time. And we've got to, if you're a person living with sickle cell disease, recruit your friends and family. Guess what? You can have sickle cell trait and still donate blood, right? That does not stop you from donating blood. But I can't imagine the day, you know, my son needed blood 2 weeks ago, and he was in a very precarious situation, and he needed blood. I can't imagine that him getting his blood transfusion, it was delayed because they don't have a good match. Those matches come from people within the same ethnic groups. When you've had as many transfusions as individuals with sickle cell, that match has to be very, very good and and very close so that you don't develop immunities to blood transfusions later on in your life. So we as a community have to step up. We have to, if we can't donate ourselves, then recruit other people to donate. Do it as a team, and do a donor day with your friends and family. Make it something fun, but we can't not donate to make sure that's part of supporting this community as well.
Absolutely.
Hey, I was just gonna say, if you're worried that you're gonna run out of blood, you make 2 million red blood cells every second. Every second, you make 2 million red blood cells. You could spare some of them.
Knowledge is power. So just think, there's a little bit of information on how important it is to either donate blood to help save one of your fellow sickle cell patients, to know how important it is to get vaccinated, to stay healthy, and to wear face masks. And you want to be out in these public settings and just protect yourself. Be careful. Make sure you go and get tested, often if you don't have the vaccine, just to stay up on what your health is doing if you are one of those ones who are afraid to go and get the vaccine.
What a great way to wrap this up. I will give 30 seconds to other panel members who may have anything left to say, and then we will close it out.
Well, I've been close to death a couple of times. Been fell from a roof, not a roof, second story onto my head. When I was 7, very close to that, very, very close to that the doctor said that I might not make it. I've been had 2 operations, and then after those operations, I had pneumonia. And that came another very close time to death. Spent about a month or so. What was supposed to be like a routine 2 operations in one day to come out within the week, spent a month to 6 weeks in the hospital. I know the severity of, I can imagine the severity of coronavirus within our community as a sickle cell warrior, sickle cell patient. And being so close to death those few times, I don't want coronavirus to take me out. And if I can do anything to not let coronavirus take me out and live even longer, because I have goals to go on, my son depends on me, and everything else like that, then I will definitely encourage everybody to take the COVID vaccine, because the chances of you dying from COVID vaccine and from you dying from COVID, the disease, they are from east to the west. So I encourage everybody to take it. Talk to your doctors and make an intelligent choice.
I agree. I've been close to death twice, and it's a scary moment. And I just feel like it's very important to get the shot. If you want more information, do it. For more information, do it. Reach out to your doctors, have a conversation with them. Even if you have to write down questions that you don't understand, write them down. And when you go in there, you ask these questions so you could feel more comfortable, because it's like a relief when you get the shot. You feel more comfortable. We're already living in fear every day because we don't know when we're about to have a sickle cell crisis. So just to get that extra weight off your shoulders, I think you should get the shot. So you can sleep at night. You can feel more comfortable. You can go to the grocery store. You can do the things that you want to do because you're already just fearful of sickle cell.
Awesome. Dr. Z, anything to add?
Well, I mean, I just want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you for being here, right? Whatever decision you make, I respect. But I I want to say I love people who are in search for knowledge. Knowledge is power. Keep looking for it. And just know that this will end, right? COVID-19 will end. But before it does, we just have to make sure we protect our community in every way we can. So if you are somebody who chooses not to get vaccinated, try to help in another way. Go donate blood. Go engage with your community. Do some good for the sickle cell community. We need all the help we can get.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, last but not least, we want to once again thank Santonio Holmes and the Third and Long Foundation. We are so grateful. Not only that you sponsored this event, but that you showed up, my man. You showed up. So, you know, I owe you one. I owe you one. So thank you. Thank you very much. And then, of course, special thanks to Dr. Ahmar Zaidi. We are so grateful for your expert opinions and your expertise and your advocacy with boldness, unapologetic advocacy amongst your peers on the behalf of this community. There are no words to really express how grateful we are for you to take your privilege and extend that into pushing people to do better and be better as providers. We thank our warriors, Angelo Daniels and Keandra Smart. Thank you guys. You all showed up and you used your lived experience to encourage others. And it wasn't all, as I like to say, roses and rainbows, right? But you don't regret what you did. You did it. You made an informed decision and you did what was right for you. So thank you very much. And then last but not least, here at the Sickle Cell Foundation of Minnesota, we invite you to participate in our national event on 2021 World Sickle Cell Day. We are doing a World Sickle Cell Day selfie challenge. So if you go to our page, you will see more information about it. We want you all to take selfies of yourself holding a light or with some sort of signage with one of the hashtags, shine the light on sickle cell. We're gonna create a collage and we're gonna put facts, sickle cell facts all throughout the month of June. World Sickle Cell Day is annually on June 19th. Okay, y'all, the date don't change. It's June 19th every year is World Sickle Cell Day. Not to be confused with Sickle Cell Awareness Month in September. That's something different. But we invite you to participate in that. You don't have to be in Minnesota. If you are in Minnesota, we invite you to participate in our Move for Sickle Cell Summer Challenge. We have a way to virtually participate. And then we also have 2 in-person events. One is going to be a slow roll for sickle cell on World Sickle Cell Day, which is also Juneteenth this year. And then we are going to do sickle cell walk and talks throughout the summer months of June, July, and August. So head on over to any of our social media sites and you can get more information about our upcoming events. But we want you to participate. We got to show up and show out, folks. This is part of our advocacy. This is how we make sure that our voices are elevated and that we are seen and heard. So thank you for joining us tonight. We are so incredibly grateful to each one of you for participating, asking your questions. We apologize if we didn't get to your specific question, but we think we had a robust conversation. If you have any questions, contact us, sicklecellmn@gmail.com, sicklecellmn@gmail.com. Have a wonderful evening. We appreciate you. Stay strong and stay healthy.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.